This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. My guest today is the awesome and amazing Art Sobczak. And Art has been helping salespeople say the right things to get through, get in, and sell, primarily using that dreaded tool that everyone listening to this podcast absolutely hates, the phone. The phone, people. And Art believes that the most effective way to sell is humans speaking to other humans. And Art is brilliant at helping them do that in a conversational, non-salesy way. His award-winning book, Smart Calling, How to Eliminate the Fear, Failure, and Rejection from Cold Calling, is the alternative to cold calling and has helped speakers get more business without sounding like the typical caller begging a meeting planner to look at their material. And for those of you watching the video, yes, I have the book on my bookshelf, ready reference, signed copy. Look at that, signed copy right there. So this is serious. I will tell you, Art, I recommend your book and Sam Richter's book. And that's the only two books that I ever tell people that they need when it comes to sales and selling and doing a better job in the telephone selling arena.
Wow. Thank you, David. Thank you, first of all, for the awesome introduction. I appreciate that. And thank you so much. I didn't realize that. And I got to say, great choice on both of our books and definitely Sam's as well, because it's a fantastic compliment and it's the front end to what I teach, which is knowing something about people you call before you call them. Novel concept, right?
So, Art, let's talk about some mistakes that professional salespeople make on the phone. And then let's also talk about some common mistakes that you see speakers make on the phone.
Well, I'm not sure if there's a difference, David, because even though someone might call themselves a professional salesperson, they might do that for a living, they're still prone to some of the same mistakes that speakers make when they have to pick up the phone and sell themselves, even though they don't have salesperson in the title. And I would say by far, one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're prospecting. I'm not going to use the term cold calling except in a derogatory sense, because to me, a cold call is calling someone you don't know who isn't expecting your call and essentially giving everybody the same pitch and not doing any research on them or customizing or tailoring the message. And that is, I would say, the #1 mistake. And that is simply calling somebody up, either leaving a voicemail or if you get them live, which is more rare, simply going into a pitch and asking for 10 minutes of their time or asking if they can set up a time for a face-to-face appointment or a demo or whatever it is. So actually, there are about 3 mistakes in that, what I just said. So actually, let me give you an example of it, David. It would be, let's use a speaker. Speaker calls up someone and says, "Hi, Mr. Meeting Planner. My name's Joe Speaker. I'm with Speakers R Us. And hey, the reason for the call is that I know you have your big convention coming up. And what I speak on is team building. And I would like to take about 15 minutes of your time on another call and tell you a little bit about what we do and how we do it." So what's wrong with that? Well, #1, and actually I did put something good in there, and that was I alluded to the fact that I knew they had a convention. A lot of people don't even go that far. So that would be doing some smart call research. So they did a little bit of research. There definitely should be some more research in there. What they did was they said, "I'm a speaker. I speak on this. Big deal. So what? Who cares?" And I say this to every group I work with. People do not buy the thing. The thing in this case being speaking, they always buy the result. And the result could be solving a problem. If someone is a humorist or a celebrity speaker, the result is the good feeling that they want their people to leave with at the end of the program. There could be some major problem that they're dealing with in their industry right now. And perhaps you deal with that and you help them solve that. You help them prevent the shoplifting and shrinkage in their stores. Again, whatever it might be, those are the things that they're interested in. They don't care about a speech, okay? And that's what we need to allude to in the opening. So we really don't even talk about the fact that, hey, I'm a speaker and I want to present a keynote or a workshop or a breakout or whatever. And then the other huge mistake is asking for a decision. A decision being, I want to take 15 minutes of your time, or I want to set up an appointment, or I want to send you my video. They don't care about any of that stuff yet. All we're trying to do in the first 10 seconds of a phone call is earn the right for the next 20 seconds. We really want to accomplish two things, David, in our openings as well as our voicemail messages. Number one, put them in a positive, receptive state of mind. Because if we think about it, what is that person doing when they either pick up our phone or they're listening to our voicemail message? If they don't know us, chances are they're not saying, boy, I sure wish a team building speaker would give me a call right now. Of course they're not. So they're probably in this frame of mind where they're a little bit skeptical and maybe even bordering on defensive when they're going to take a call from someone they don't know, like most of us do. I mean, if you got caller ID like I do, I see a number that I don't recognize. I'm wondering, actually, I'm hoping that it may be a prospect, but I'm also wondering, is this a salesperson? Now, I look at it a little bit differently than most people, because if it's a salesperson, I love that because I turn my recorder on and I can use it for material. But if somebody receives a call from somebody they don't know, we need to quickly shift them from that neutral or perhaps negative or skeptical frame of mind into a positive, receptive state of mind where they're curious. And then the only other objective is to get them talking from that positive, receptive state of mind. What we don't want them to do is to shift into the state of mind where they're thinking, oh, it's another speaker, it's another salesperson. I'm good, I'm all set. And they go into, let's get rid of this caller frame of mind. So again, those are a couple of the most major mistakes that I see in my book. I go into about 25 of them that every salesperson should be aware of before they're creating their opening. And by the way, that's another mistake, not being totally prepared with what you're going to say when you get on the phone. And I know I'm kind of rambling here. Feel free to jump in. I know it's your show.
No, this is awesome.
So another big mistake is not being totally prepared with what they're going to say. I have to cringe every time I hear a salesperson say, well, I don't want to be scripted. I want to be natural. I don't want to wing it. I don't want to come across as that telemarketer. Well, here's the secret for those folks. If you're not totally prepared with what you're going to say, which, by the way, is the definition of a script, isn't it? If you're not totally prepared with what you're going to say, you're going to realize your worst fear, and that is sounding like a doofus. And one of my favorite sayings is the absolute worst time to think of what you're going to say is as it's flowing from your mouth. And speakers more than anybody should know this, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and I think, that first 10 seconds is critical. And as you say, the purpose of the first 10 seconds is to get the opportunity to say the remaining 20 seconds and then get the prospect talking about their wants, their needs, their goals, their meeting, their people, their team, their outcomes as soon as you possibly can. I heard another sales mantra, which I forget who said it, but I think you would agree with it. A prospect who is listening is not a prospect, right? A prospect who is talking to you is a prospect. But if you're doing the data dump, if you're doing the 3 minutes, I, me, my, look at my website, look at my videos, look at my one sheet, look at my speaker reel, right? They're totally tuned out. And that's what kicks them into, oh my God, how do I get off this call mode?
Yeah, I will agree with all of that, depending on where it happens. At the beginning of the call, you want to get them talking as much as possible. Where we want them to listen is later in the call process, after I've asked the questions, after I've created the curiosity. Well, actually, I create the curiosity first, then we ask the questions, we identify the needs, pains, problems, wants, values, and then we want to embellish them a little bit more. And then we go into the next step in the process, which I call recommendation phase. Some people call it presentation. I don't like to call it presentation because normally when you think of the word presentation, what do we think of? Somebody who is giving a presentation, PowerPoint, one way, right? And that's not what we want to do. We want to give a recommendation based on what? Information that we had gleaned from the previous part of the call, which was the fact-finding, the discovery, right? And this is why it just kills me every time somebody thinks they can just jump on the phone. They want that one magic bullet. What can I say to get somebody interested? It's like saying, how do I build a house? It's like, oh, sure. Well, here's the easy button. Boom, there it is. No, it totally is a process. So the next step in that process is the recommendation. So David, based on what you told me about your audience and what you're looking for and what you didn't like about previous speakers and what you want people to walk away with, I've got the exact program here for you that we would put together based on my customization. Let me tell you how I'm going to do that. So now I prefaced you for what I'm going to say. Now I want you listening. And that's still going to be interactive. So kind of digressed a little bit here.
Sure. No, that's critical. Hey, good looking. Are you currently getting paid to speak? Would you like to ramp that up? We can help. Book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team at doitmarketing.com/call, and let's see what we might do together. The call is free, but the results may be priceless. Well, and like you said about building a house, there is the foundational step, right? Which in the Smart Calling book, you call the pre-call phase. Then there's placing the call. And oh my gosh, Art, what do I say? How do I get them hooked? What's that magic first 10 seconds? What do I say? What do I ask? How do I get in? And then, of course, there's all the follow-up, because we're not going to do a one-call close typically. It's going to be a follow-up step, and then that leads into your sales process, and that leads into a value exchange, and so on and so forth. So let's talk about when you place the call. Let's just bust some myths. So you hear a lot of sales trainers say, always open the call. Did I catch you at a good time? Did I catch you at a good time? Did I catch you at a bad time? Depending on, do you want to hear yes? Do you want to hear no? What do you think about did I catch you at a good time, bad time, crazy time, no time?
Well, if you ever want to start a heated discussion, which I do quite often in my programs, I'll always ask, how many people here like to ask for time at the beginning of a call? How many people would never ask for time? How many people are right in the middle? So I normally get about a third. And what I will always say is it depends. It depends. There are people who are very adamant, and I could argue all sides of this issue. Now, for the people who say never touch on the time issue, I can agree with that because you're giving somebody an opportunity to get you off the phone. Obviously, they weren't expecting your call. Everybody in the world is busy. They may have picked up your call thinking it was somebody else. And then when they realize it's a salesperson, of course, they're not going to have any time for you. The other side of that argument is, hey, we're calling busy decision makers. They weren't expecting my call. I just don't want to intrude on them and be that guy, that telemarketer. And then for the rest of the crowd, me included, I totally say it depends. Here's what it depends on. It depends on you. How do you feel about the time issue? Now, if you feel you want to touch on the time issue, I'm going to give you the exact wording for that right here. And that is this. Every opening statement needs to have the introduction, who you are. You want to have some smart calling intelligence, something you know about them, whatever that connection is. You want to have your value statement, I call it the possible value proposition, because we don't know if it's going to be of value or not until we speak with them, right? We can have a hypothesis of value. And by the way, I'm glad I really took, I forget whatever class it was where we talked about hypothesis, because it's the only time in my life I've ever used it. So we can have a hypothesis of value, and then we want to get to the questioning. Now, if you want to insert the time issue in there, you could say something like this. Hi, David, Art Sobczak here with Business by Phone. Hey, I understand in speaking with one of your sales managers that a big initiative, big push you have is for new business development and getting new business. But the problem is your salespeople are reluctant to pick up the phone, mainly because they're not quite sure what they're going to say. Well, we work with sales teams helping them do exactly that. Matter of fact, one of our most recent clients have doubled the amount of new accounts they brought in within 1 month. And if I've reached you at a good time, I'd like to ask you a few questions to see if I could provide you some information. So notice I didn't say, do you have a few moments to talk? I've simply snuck it in there. And if my possible value statement is strong enough, what are they doing? They're leaning forward going, yeah, okay. And the whole time issue, just unless their hair is on fire and somebody is standing in front of them, they're probably going to say, okay. And by the way, that's the only response I want at the end of my opening. Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, what do you want to know? That's what I'm looking for, okay? And if somebody doesn't want to use it, fine, I'm good with that. But what it also depends on for me is how somebody answers the phone. I mean, if they sound like, again, that their hair's on fire, and by the way, you got to be careful about that too. Some people just sound that way all the time. I know when I pick up the phone, I will test salespeople and I'll sound like I'm busy. Well, I'm always busy. Everybody's busy, right? Everybody's busier than they've ever been. Not necessarily more productive, but busier than they've ever been. So it's got to be, it's a personal thing. So that's my answer to that. If you're comfortable with it, do it, but try to sneak it in. Don't blatant. And by the way, it's always got to come after the possible value. Never start out a call with, "Hi, David, Art Subczak here, business by phone. Do you have a few moments to speak?" And because the logical answer to that is, well, no, not really. My answer to that is, it depends. And they'll say, depends on what? I say, it depends on whether you're buying or selling.
Absolutely. Well, so let's say that they don't answer the phone. I know that in the Smart Calling book, you've got some voicemail strategies. And again, we can argue both sides of this, but I always like taking these hot button issues. Some people say, never leave a voicemail, ever, never leave a voicemail. Other people say, oh, always leave a voicemail. A voicemail is like a 20 or 30-second radio commercial. You totally want to leave a compelling voicemail. Where do you sit on the voicemail issue and how we can do it smarter and better?
Well, here's where I sit on this. And anybody that says don't leave a voicemail, I'd have to challenge them and say, why do you say don't leave a voicemail? Some people will say that, well, it takes too much time. Well, it shouldn't be more than 10 or 15 seconds. You've already done the heavy lifting here if you've done a good job with preparing for the call. So what I've done, as you mentioned, is I've done some smart call research. I have prepared for this call. I prepared for exactly what I'm going to say if I reach them live, which essentially should be exactly the same thing you're going to leave in your voicemail. Now, if you've done this the right way, if you've done this the smart calling way, you're not talking about your thing. They don't know that you're calling to sell them something, according to the negative sense of the word. We're not going to ever give that impression. And again, what does a good opening do? Positive, receptive state of mind gets them talking. What a voicemail does, add one more thing, it makes them curious and it leaves an unanswered question. So there's an open loop there. So if I've already done all this heavy lifting, why in the world wouldn't I take the extra 10 or 15 seconds and leave that voicemail message? Now, is this going to get a return call? Probably not. But here's what it does. It leaves an impression. And as the marketing guy, you know that the more impressions you can leave in somebody's mind, at some point they may resonate through that repetition. So what may happen is when my follow-up call comes in and they see my name or company name on caller ID, they may pick it up. They may say to their assistant, hey, if this guy calls with business by phone and he talks about new business development, I want to talk to that guy. And that might take a couple more calls. But what has happened here is at least you made that positive impression. Now, this is all predicated upon having a good message, not the me message.
Right. Absolutely right. Well, the next big hot debate is gatekeepers, assistants, screeners, personal assistants. You're calling the American Plumbing Association. You get Susie Cream Cheese, who's the assistant to the executive director or the assistant to the programs chair, and she's going to ask you the dreaded question. So, Art, what is this about? Or, Art, may I say why you're calling? And how do we handle the assistant tactically? And just what's your philosophy strategically with assistants and gatekeepers?
Yeah, let me give you the strategy first and then the tactics. I have completely banned the use of the word gatekeepers from my workshops and in my Facebook community and with anybody I work with, because that's derogatory. It's negative. It implies that this is somebody that we're trying to go above, around, through, over, under. Like there are still some people teaching out there, which is absolutely stupid. I mean, anybody that says those things, I have to wonder if they've ever placed a call before. And if they need a lesson in this, I would encourage them to go talk to somebody in their own organization that plays the role of the assistant or the gatekeeper, as they like to call it, or the screener, and see what their thoughts are when salespeople try these stupid tactics with them. I love the word assistant, as you had mentioned, and that's how we refer to them for two reasons. One is they're likely the decision maker's assistant, but they're also our assistant as well. And we need to go in and approach them as such, because at the point you speak with an assistant, they are the most important person in your life as it relates to getting to that buyer at that very moment. And we've got to treat them with respect. We've got to treat them as the buyer, because they are making a decision as to whether or not to buy what you're selling. And that is, are you important enough to speak with the boss? Now, they do perform the role of screening people out. Who do they screen out? Time-wasting, self-serving salespeople who are just trying to give a pitch. So let's get into the tactics. What do we say to, well, actually, there's several different tactics and strategies with the assistant. One is I want to go in and use them, not use them in a negative sense, but work with them as an information resource. Talk about that here in a second. Also, I need to understand that we both have the same goal, and that is to protect the decision maker's time and ensure that he or she's only speaking to somebody who has something of potential value. So if I call, give a great, brilliant opening statement, and they say, okay, well, what's this in reference to? I'm sorry, I wouldn't have given my opening statement. I simply would have identified myself and asked for the decision maker. However, I might not have if I'm following the smart calling approach and I don't even know who I should be speaking with, or I need more information. So, for example, to preempt being screened, somebody answers the phone and says, Jane Douglas's office, may I help you? I said, yeah, I really do hope you can help me. My name's Art Sobczak. I'm with Business by Phone, and I'm looking to be speaking with Jane, and I want to make sure I'm prepared when I do, and I bet there's probably some information you could help me with. You work closely with her, don't you? So now let's look at what I've done up to this point. I've identified myself, my company, and now instead of being the typical salesperson, yeah, Jane, please, which immediately sends up the fireworks, red flags, shouting out salesperson, I'm saying, hey, you probably work closely with her. I'm hoping to speak with her. I want to make sure I'm prepared. Now, what am I doing there? I'm insinuating that I respect her time, her being the decision maker. I want to make sure I'm prepared when I speak with her. There's probably some information you could help me with. So now I'm engaging this person, and then I'm asking a question. You probably work closely with her, don't you? The question I already know the answer to. So we've got some ninja stuff going on here, which we can talk about at another time. So now what's the logical answer to that? Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. And notice what I didn't say is, may I ask you some questions? Because that's a question in and of itself. Instead, what I've said is there's probably some information you could help me with. So I just made a statement. And normally they'll probably also caught them off guard. Not everybody does this. And you've done so many things here. You've separated yourself from all the other sales people that they put in that category of salesperson. So now I can engage them in a conversation. I say, so I know Jane is responsible for your national sales meeting. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Do you get involved in that at all? And by the way, I tell a story in my programs where I actually use that with an assistant. And she said, get involved in it. She said, I make all the recommendations for who we have at the program. I'm going, bingo. So I was pretty much sold even before Jane had even heard of me at that point. So that is what I suggest somebody, and by the way, the term for that is social engineering. That can be looked at in a negative sense when computer hackers do it. We use it for positive purposes. It's an entire chapter of my book. I've been teaching it for years. Social engineering is just simply asking questions of anybody, assistants, but anybody who answers the phone in an organization. And I would encourage every salesperson to do it, because let's face it, most of the time when you call, you're not going to get a decision maker on the phone. But almost 100% of the time, you can get somebody on the phone. And again, I've already done the heavy lifting. If I can hit pound or zero or whatever, I can get another voice on the phone. If I can collect 2 or 3 pieces of information that can now help me to put together a more tailored message on my next call, now I even sound more customized and more tailored than somebody who hasn't done that work. All right, so let's go to the actual question that you asked, which was, what do you say if they say, well, what's this in reference to? Assuming I hadn't done this yet, assuming I had just called and I just asked for the decision maker by name, and they say, what's this in reference to? I'll say, oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, the reason for the call is, then I would give pretty much the exact same thing I'm going to say to the decision maker. Why would I say anything different? Well, the reason for the call is I understand that Jane has an initiative next year for new business with your sales reps. But in speaking with your sales manager, one of the problems you're running into is they're not quite comfortable what to say. So they're not making the calls. I don't know if you've heard any of that. So really what I'd like to do is ask her a few questions to see if it might be worth our while to speak further, because we work with sales teams to help them do exactly that.
Gotcha. No, that's fantastic. I also want to bring in something that is huge, and there is an entire chapter in your book on this too. And everyone wants the script, everyone wants the magic lines, and nobody listens. And this is one of my pet peeves, Art. I'll tell you, we ask a question, we get valuable, actionable, insightful data, and we go, yeah, okay. And then they just ask the next scripted question, as opposed to doing it like a courtroom attorney, where you never ask a question that you don't want to hear the answer to, and then you build on that answer or you weave that answer back into the next thing that you're going to say. I know there's an art, no pun intended, an art and a science to this. What are some of your best tips on deeply listening to the other end of the sales conversation, which is, I would say, where most of the sales happen?
Bingo. Well, you hit the nail right on the head. And it's kind of funny. I'll share with you one of the things that I do in my workshops, because we're all speakers here. I should maybe assume that. But I tell people when we get to the questioning section, I say, okay, here's what we're going to do now, folks. I'm going to share with you some real ninja, mind-blowing, earth-shattering stuff. I'm going to give you the advanced level of questioning. Okay. It's the advanced level of questioning. Everybody knows how to question, right? We've been doing it all our lives, but very few people do it at the advanced level. Okay. Are you ready? We probably should turn the recording off for this, but we'll keep it on. Okay. Here it goes. Step 1, ask your first question. Step 2, listen to the answer. Step 3, here it is. Are you ready? Might want to sit down for this. Buckle up. Ask the next question. There it is. Ask the next question in direct response to what they just said, not the next question on your list of 10 questions. And that's exactly what you just said. And I've got a term for this. And people do it all the time. They question habitually and subconsciously without listening to the answer. I mean, I was at the grocery store, and I guess most grocery chains now train their people to ask the same question as they're checking out. And that question is, did you find everything you were looking for? Right? So, and by the way, I love grocery shopping. I'm a cook, and sometimes I'll go twice a day because I just love shopping. But anyway, I'm going through the line, and it was a new checkout person that I didn't know in my neighborhood grocery store. So as she's checking me out, groceries, by the way. She's checking me out. She says, did you find everything that you were looking for? And I said, yes. She was, oh, good. So then she continued, didn't even look up, just continues to scan the next items. And I'm not kidding you, about 10 items later, she says, did you find everything you're looking for? So I look around as if, I'm on a candid camera or something. And I just started laughing. And I said, yeah, I still did.
Still me. I'm still the same guy.
Yeah. I didn't think of anything else while I was here. But no, you're exactly right. And that is one of the common problems that salespeople of all types make. And when I listen to calls, and I'll do this with some clients, I'll listen to recorded calls, we'll do some coaching. I feel like just jumping through the computer screen and the earphones when pretty much a prospect will be saying, yeah, I'm interested in this, or this is what we really need, or this is the area in which we're weak. And I call those the emotional responses that we need to, first of all, if they're on a roll speaking, I suggest you don't interrupt. So I suggest that A, you write it down so you can come back to it. And B, you do come back to it and use their exact words. So David, when you said that your organization is kind of weak in the area of just picking up the phone, could you expand on that a little bit more? So now, and I've got another term for this, I call it the iceberg theory of questioning. So if you see an iceberg out in the water, what do you see? A tip, right? Just the tip of the iceberg. What we don't see is the great big old massive ice below the water level. So I compare that to questioning. If you ask a question, what do you get? The tip of the iceberg, the first question. What don't you hear? This great big massive ice that's below the water level. And those are the reasons behind what they just said. People are going to buy not because of the tip, the first answer, they're going to buy because of the reasons. And the more we question, the deeper we go, the bigger their reasons get. And the more we know about their reasons, the why behind their reasons, the more they sell themselves, which is the goal of every salesperson. If we can get somebody to volunteer the sale or the order, that's a much stronger sale than if we have to try to convince somebody, which is not a good strategy.
Exactly right. Exactly right. What a great episode. Wowza. Tell you what, if you want to ramp up your revenue as an expert who speaks professionally, you should really check out our free online training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. Well, so for the folks listening, I just cannot recommend Art's book highly enough. All the things we talked about are in there. And then Art, I know you also have some virtual training. You've got this fantastic new Facebook community. You've got the online archives or archives, if you will.
Ooh, I like that.
I know. So last couple of questions here, and you talk about this in the Smart Calling book, and we've sort of referenced it along the way here. I think so much of this success with selling in general, but maybe even success with selling by phone, is mindset, practice, and conditioning. And you're not going to get this if you pick up the phone 3 times a week. You're not going to get this if you do this once in a while, when you're bored one day, you have an hour to kill. What role do you think, because there's some great tips in the Smart Calling book about mindset and about the way that we frame using the phone to be rejection-free, truly to be rejection-free. Mindset, practice, and conditioning. Talk to us about how important those 3 things are.
I would say it's probably 90% of your success. Everything that I mostly talk about are the mechanics. It's the what to say, how to say it within the process. Now, granted, that all still has to be there because you can be the most positive person in the world who's immune to rejection. If you're not saying the right things, it's just not going to work for you. I had somebody in our Smart Calling community that I had to correct because she said, well, I believe that you just need to be yourself and just get on the phone. You don't need a script. Just get on the phone and be yourself. I said, no, that's not going to work because I can pull somebody off the street and they could just be themselves and they're not going to do squat. However, you could have somebody who knows every single technique out there and they could be very knowledgeable, but they could be like the PhD who's driving Uber, which, no offense to Uber drivers, but the thing is that there's probably no other profession that relies more on mindset as it relates to your success than selling. Because let's say, for example, an accountant could come in and be hungover, feeling like crap, and still put out a passable spreadsheet or payroll, right? But a salesperson, unless you're pretty good at faking it, you're not going to be able to really have the passion and come across as the person that you are and want to be and seem to be like to that person at the other end of the phone. And that's doubly true for speakers. And I think speakers probably are a little bit better at this because we know that every time we step out there on stage or in front of a group in a workshop, even if we don't feel like it, we can never give that impression. We got to bring our A game, our A+ game every single time. And anybody that's been in this business for a while, we know that we don't always feel like doing it. But I told somebody this the other day. I said, I would say I've done over 1,500 programs, and I would say that probably none of them knew that I didn't have my A game every single time. Now, there were a number of times that I didn't feel like it, but we still have to do it. So for salespeople, there are a number of things that are in play here. One is as far as prospecting and calling for professional salespeople, I tell them that if your livelihood relies on you building your pipeline, and for speakers, it may not be all the time, but it may be at certain times if you don't have a good marketing machine going, and I'm sure you teach them I know you teach them how to do that, but there may be times when we really get on a push. So therefore, it can't be, I'm going to fit my prospecting in around other things. It needs to be, I'm going to fit other things around my prospecting. It has to be non-negotiable. It's got to be a ritual. It's got to be an appointment that you set with yourself. Now, somebody might say, that's all fine and good, but you don't like the rejection. All right, well, here's how we deal with that. This is where we change our mindset and the way we look at something. So what is rejection? And I always ask this question in workshops. I say, who here has been rejected before? Everybody says, oh, I have, right? I say, oh, really? How do you know? And it's funny, if you want to get some group participation, ask people how they've been rejected before. Oh, I get a no. Or they hang up on you. They don't return your calls. They ignore your voicemail. Okay, I'll listen, I'll smile and agree, and I'll say, you know what? Every one of those things that you guys just told me, those are things that happen to you, right? Can you argue that? No. I said, now, is rejection what happens to you or the way you define what happens to you? Those things are things. They're experiences. And by the way, if you're going to be selling, here's a secret. You're not going to get a yes most of the time. That's why I get the big bucks in this profession, right? For profound statements like that. So they're not going to be successful most of the time. And therefore, we need to have plans in place for when we don't get it so we don't look at this as rejection. So I've got 2 ways to deal with that. One is proactive, and that is to simply get a win every time you pick up the phone. Now, this doesn't have to be anything that's earth-shattering. It could be simply something that could even be activity or information related. So, for example, it could be, well, at least I qualified them as not being a prospect. Boy, that's kind of like getting a no, isn't it? Yeah. Or it could be, at least I found out when next year's convention is going to be. Or at least I asked the question. Because at the end of a long session of calling, instead of saying, I got rejected 30 times, can't wait to do it again tomorrow, said no one ever, you could say, well, I accomplished my primary 3 times. My primary being I set an appointment, or I got my materials out, or I got agreement, whatever. And then the other 27 times, I accomplished my secondary objective, which is whatever that might have been, the question or whatever the activity is. Because again, it's the story that we're telling ourselves. If you tell yourself you're getting rejected, of course you're going to feel that. And then that's going to cause you to not perform the activity that's going to give you that feeling. But if I can give myself a feeling of a win every single time and then look at it, and here's the other part of this, we just need to look at it as a thing, because nothing really has any meaning until you give it meaning. So if I take a no and I give that the meaning of, oh, I'm crushed, I was rejected, that's the story I'm telling myself. That's the meaning I've attached to it. Somebody else could say the exact same thing happened to them. They could say, all right, I got to know, but at least I found out they're not a prospect and I kept the door open for the future opportunity. That's the meaning I gave to that call. What's the barber say? Next. We move on. And here's something else that I suggest that salespeople do. When you get a no, you can plant a seed for the future. Planting a seed for the future might be, let's say I gleaned something during the course of my conversation, and I can give them something to look for. So I might say, all right, David, may not be a topic that will be on your radar for this year, but if you hear more and more from some of your field sales managers that their salespeople need to do more prospecting, keep in mind that we've got the exact program that'll help them do that. So when you're planning for next year, if you're hearing those things, I'll be here for you. You'll have my information. So now what have I done? I planted a seed, and if you just apply that to the sheer numbers of calls that most salespeople make, and even speakers, apply that to any number of calls that you're making. I'm from the Midwest. There's farms out there. I know that when the more seeds people plant, the more have a chance to germinate. How long did it take me to plant that seed? Not very long at all. And also what it's done for my mindset is I can feel good about that. And by the way, you're going to come back and harvest some of those, because I think anybody that's been in business more than a few days, or let's say a few months, have probably had people that maybe we wrote off and we thought, we probably won't do anything with them. But they called you up and said, hey, David, some things have changed here. And I know this is something that you do or something that we talked about before. I'd like to resume that conversation. Now, that happened as a result of something you did, maybe even subconsciously. So my suggestion here is do it proactively.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Such a treasure chest. So Art, let me ask you, because people are already taking notes. They've got 4 pages of notes as they're listening. They're about to take a lot more notes. What are some ways that our listeners can get connected and stay connected to you and the world of smart calling and your online programs and your mentorship and your everything?
Well, probably the best thing to do is to go to our blog site, which is smartcalling.com. Pretty easy, smartcalling.com. That links to my main site, my training, most of our free stuff. Got all kinds of things there for you. You can get on our weekly email list, not just to get on the email list, but so that you can get some valuable tips just like this every week. If you want more of that daily, including some personal stuff, some funny stuff, recorded phone calls, go to our Facebook community. It's simply called the Smart Calling Community of Sales Professionals, Smart Calling. Look it up. And all we ask you do is when you ask to join, just answer the 3 questions. And I just do that so we can get rid of the bots and the people who may not participate. But everybody, just tell me you know David. Matter of fact, if you put in there that I know David, I might even send you cash or not.
There you go.
But
money in the bank. All right. Art Sobczak, you are awesome. I'm looking forward to having you back, because this is a deep subject, big subject, and I hope that we can talk more about it soon.
David, be my pleasure. Can't wait to do it. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.